Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel, everyone. This is Sharon from Mad Paper Crush. And today I just wanted to turn on the video and talk to you a little bit about the process of putting together signatures for a junk journal or an altered book. I've gotten a couple questions about this, and so I thought I'd just walk you through the process of how I do it, and you can see what tips you might pick up. Or if you've never done it before, hopefully this will help you to build your junk journal or altered book for yourself. So I am currently working on an altered book. This is a cover for a book that I'm putting together for my brother-in-law for his birthday. So he is a worship leader at a church, and so I thought this would be a great book to put together for him. And my sister will be adding some notes and things from his friends and things like that into it. So I wanted to start putting this together so that we could get it to her to get ready for him. So what I do usually, now this one is just an altered book, so I've taken out the middle pages of it, and I just have the cover here. So this is a pretty small spine, and I will show you kind of how we work with that as we go through to look at the papers. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was the papers themselves. So usually the very first thing that I do is I pull out a bunch of papers. So, and this can be anything. So I'm just gonna kind of show you what I've got, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas. So I like to have a variety of different things so that it's more interesting. The signatures are a little more interesting. So I have some of these tea stained, this was actually paper that was in a photo album. So I like the holes in it. I think that's very interesting. So I have one of those. I have some just plain tea dyed papers. So these are just regular copy paper that's been tea dyed. I have some tea dyed lined paper. So that's also, you know, this is just light paper. And then I have some tea dyed cardstock. Now, for this one, I wanted to give my sister lots of space to write in all the things that she wanted to write in. So that's why there's this many blank papers. But if you are going to be doing more ephemera, maybe with less, you can certainly change this up. So that's kind of what I pulled out for the plain papers. And then the next thing I did was pulled out a variety of pattern papers. And I'm just using, once again, scrapbook papers that were in a pack. So this one is tea dyed, but I don't know if they all are. And then this I pulled out because this is actually a book from this book. So I usually try, if I'm doing an altered book, I try to include some of the pages from the original book. I think that just makes it more interesting. And you can't really tell from this one page that I have, but it actually has some gold gilding on the side of the pages. So I may add a couple more of these in. I'm not exactly sure, but you can see down the middle, we'll have to do some fixing on this one because it is starting to pull apart. And if I want to put it back in, you know, bind it into my signature the same way it came out, we'll probably just have to reinforce this a bit to be sure that the page doesn't rip apart as when we bind it together. And then this is also just another tea stained copy paper, but my sister said my brother-in-law's favorite hymn is My Jesus, I Love Thee. So I wanted to have that in one of my pages. So this will be, you know, folded over either this way or this way to be included in the book itself. And then I also have some other papers that I pulled out. He is a musician, so I liked having, whoops, that was right side up. I liked having the, no, it's not. Ugh, maybe it's both sides. I liked having the music page going in there. I think that would be neat. He likes vintage and old things, so I thought that paper was nice. I'm kind of keeping this sort of a dark black and gray theme, so that's where this comes in. And then this paper I just liked because it had all of the old postcards and some old stamps and stuff. I just thought that would be a nice addition to the book. And then this one is a bunch of old advertisements, looks like for garden things and seeds and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I picked out. And oh, on the other side, some of these are double-sided. So I like the words and things on the double-sided ones for that. And these two, I think it's only these two, or no, these three, are all cardstock. So they're a little bit heavier, and they'll add some weight into the signatures themselves. So now that I kind of have a variety of things that I think I'm going to use, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see what size I need to make my pages. Now, it's pretty easy to make that determination if you're doing an altered book that you have the signatures that you originally pulled out. So you can easily just take these, the book that you pulled out, and measure them so that you kind of know what size your pages need to be. So this one right here is about 5 3/4. And actually, if I take out sort of the bend from the bind, which I think I want to do, it's closer to 5 1/2 inches, which, since I'm going to be using regular copy paper, if I fold it in half, it's really only going to be 5 1/2 inches anyway. So that's probably the size I'll be using for the rest of these pages. And then for our height, we have about 8 1/4, just a teeny bit more than 8 1/4 inches. So that's the size that we're going to do. Now, if you have a cover that you don't have the inside pages on, or you're making your own cover and you need to know the page size, you just measure the side of the book. So just one side of the cover you can measure to see how long or how wide your pages need to be. And once again, this is about 5 3/4. And I would probably come in just a little bit anyway, because as you fold things over and tuck them inside of each other, sometimes they stick out a little. So giving yourself an 1/8 or 1/4 inch leeway is probably pretty good anyway, so that you won't have pages sticking out from the side of the book there. So once again, because of the pages I'm going to be starting with, I'm probably going to make all of my pages 5 1/2 wide, which would be, if we're folding it in half, it would be 11 inches wide. And then same thing for if you just have the cover, give yourself an 1/8 inch or so at the top and the bottom so that your pages stay nice and neat inside of your cover, and do that measurement as well. So once again, this is about 8 1/4. There's a little bit, maybe another 8 there, another 3/8 or so, but probably 8 1/4 is going to be good for this book. So that's kind of what I'm starting with in terms of my papers. So I know how much to cut them down for like my big sheets and things like this. And this one, for example, I think these are a little bit over 11 inches. So this one I probably wouldn't need to cut down, and it would still fit inside. But we'll see if we actually do that. And then the next thing that you want to consider, so once you've got all your papers together, you have a variety of all your papers that you're going to do, and you've got your measurements, then you can start cutting down your papers and making some more decisions. Now, I'm going to wait to cut down my papers because I want to be sure that, I kind of know the exact amount that I'm going to use inside of the book before, I start cutting down all the papers, so that I don't, sort of waste them for another book that I might be able to use them in if I don't use them into here. So our next thing that we want to do is we kind of want to look at the spine of our book. Now this goes, once again, if you're making your own spine, you're making your own book, or you're using a book that's already put together, it's kind of the same process. So what you need to do for your spine is first determine, what's the size of your spine. So mine is about 1 1/2 inches exactly from sort of this inside cover to inside cover. Now, usually what I like to do is give myself just a little bit of leeway. So I'm going to say this is maybe a 7/8 inch spine that we're going to start with, and then we're going to make a decision about signatures. So you could do 2 signatures, you could do 7 signatures, you could do however many you want. And what that determination should come from is how you're going to be decorating your book, I think. So sometimes if you're going to be putting a lot of pockets and things in, it's better to do less signatures, because it sort of gives the signatures room to expand. And if you do more signatures and you're going to be doing less embellishing inside of the book, sometimes that's a little bit better as well. So for this one, I'm going to be doing some embellishing inside the book, but not a crazy amount. So I was thinking maybe 5 signatures might be good for us. And to just kind of make a decision about that, I can look at, you know, where can I put these on my spine just to make sure it would work. So like if I did every 1/4 of an inch, so if I start at the edge here, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that would get me right to that 1.5 inch. But now, because we said we wanted it just a teeny bit smaller, I might need to make that a little bit less. So instead of going 1/4 of an inch, I might need to go, you know, 3/16 of an inch or something like that, just to make sure we didn't go too far towards the end, because you'd like to have a little space on either side of your spine. So I think what I'm going to do is let's go with 5 signatures, and I'm going to start small. So I'm going to say let's do 3 pages in each signature. So first thing I'm going to do is cut my papers down to size. Well, first make sure, let's get 15 of them out. So I know I want these patterned papers, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. And I know I want to use this one, so that's 7. And I don't think I'm going to count that one. I'll probably just throw this one in as an extra piece there. But so we got 7 so far, so we're going to do 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so I think I'm going to take out one of my lined papers and put this other just plain tea stained in there. And who knows, we might be coming back and grabbing that again. We might need it. So I am going to cut all these papers down, and I'm also going to go ahead and fold them in half, and I'll be right back. All right, my pages are all cut down. The 12 by 12 pieces I cut into 11 by 8 1/4, except for a couple of pieces that I cut a little shorter. So I do like to have some of my pages have some variety in them. So for example, this one I think I cut down to about 7 inches, and this one was 6 inches. So this will just add some variety in the page sizes that were in there, and I kind of like to see that. So that's certainly optional, whatever you like to do. The only other thing I wanted to mention about cutting them, because these were 12 inches long, I had to cut, you know, 1 inch off of the sides. And I just, you know, wanted to be sure that I cut off an edge that maybe I wasn't as crazy about. So like I could have cut 1 inch off of this side, but I would be taking off my little 5-cent stamp here, and I really like that. So I made sure I cut off the other end. So as you're, you know, sizing your papers, if you have pattern papers and things like that, you just want to make sure you're looking out for that and making sure you're including all of the little things that you want to include on your papers. And the other thing that I will mention is I keep all of my scraps. So you never know when one of these might come in handy. We might be using this as a tuck spot maybe in the book once it's done, or to add to a tag or something like that, just to bring everything together and, you know, keep it as a cohesive piece together. So now that we're all cut, the next step is for us to fold them. And I'm going to use my scoreboard to make sure I get a nice center line on there to fold them. And then we'll go on to the next step. All right, so now we have all of our papers folded that we think are going to go in the book. And just a couple of notes: if you're using a scoreboard, when you score it, the valley that you create with the score should become your mountain when you fold. So that was a great tip that I heard from Gail Agostinelli, and I always listen to that so you don't end up cracking your paper. And so I've just kind of separated my piles here into my patterned and cardstock paper, my plain paper and my lined paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to create 5 signatures from this, and then we're going to see if that works for our book. So what I usually like to do is kind of start with this separation and then start putting things together. So I have the most of these plain papers, so I know that I want to have, you know, them spread across my 5 signatures. So what I'm going to do, let me start, I'm going to move these out of the way. So I'm just going to start with here, and I have a couple of plain cardstock. So I know that those I want, you know, in different signatures. So I'll put 2 of those there, and then I'll just kind of divide these up. So these are the rest of my signatures, and the 2 plain ones that I have, and actually, let's do it that way. We're going to put those in separate ones, but since I have 5 pieces of plain paper, these will be sort of the start of our 5 signatures. So let me then pull out sort of my next round of papers, and I'm going to start with, since I'm not really counting this little guy, I'm just going to put it aside for a second. And since these are lighter papers, I'm going to pull out, these are 2 of these, I'm going to pull out 3 more of my lighter papers if I have them, which I think I do, to go in and around on this. So I think that's good. All right, so this one is plain on one side and patterned on the inside. And this is the same thing except folded a different way. So the pattern's on the outside. So once again, I'm just kind of spreading these around. And now I'm gonna do some of my cardstock. So I know that I have, and now I'm gonna kind of look at, well, this is a plain piece of cardstock and this has more pattern. This one's more plain. So maybe I'll put the plain ones with the more patterned pieces, and then save some of these more patterned ones for my plainer signatures so that we have a variety throughout the whole thing. All right, so now we said we're going to try to do 5 signatures with 3 pages each, and we're there. We have all of that done. But I do want to make sure I add in, you know, some of these little extras that I want. So I'm going to put this one here, and I want to make sure I get my hymn in there somewhere. So I think I'm just going to add it to this one to see. So now that we have sort of our separate 5 signatures, we're going to put them together. So what I like to do is one at a time, I just take the pages that were together, that I've decided on to go together, and I put them into a signature. So because this one has a pattern, I'm going to put a plain one next to it. And then I'll add the patterned one on the inside. And once again, this is purely personal preference. So as you think about the book, you know, paging through the book, you have a variety of papers and plain papers up against each other to, you know, give your book some character. So I'm going to do the same thing with these. So this one's pretty plain, this one's patterned, and this one's pretty plain. So that one was easy enough. And this is the one that has my hymn in it, but I like that it's with a plain paper on that side there. So that's my second one. Now this one, I put that little extra piece into. I think I'm going to start with the pattern on the outside. Oh no, I don't think I really want to do that because I don't have too much pattern here. So now this is one of the reasons you might want to do a different number of signatures. And actually I'm going to put this one in here while we're at it, is because you notice that I don't have too much of a variety if I'm putting them together in this way. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So let me go ahead and get these together. So we'll put our lined paper on the outside and our plain paper on the inside. And you can see now we have a little bit of a difference here. And these lined papers weren't quite 11 inches tall, so they're a little bit shorter from the pages, and that's okay. All right, so this one we can do, let's put the plain paper on the outside, and maybe we'll put our book page in first, and then our lined paper, and maybe this time I'll put the holes up at the top, and we'll go like that. So now, if I'm looking at all my signatures, I have my 5 signatures, you can kind of get an idea of what your book will look like as you flip through it. So we're kind of flipping through here, and you can see, you know, we've got plain pages, we've got pattern papers. Once your one signature is done, you're going to have another signature here. So I could put this paper on the outside if I wanted to, and, you know, just decorate it differently, because I am going to be putting some pockets on and some tuck spots and things like that. So these will be filled more than they are now. So that's kind of how I put together the signatures. So now I have my signatures in place, and I think I'm good to go. I like the way they're at, but at this point, you know, you can always change them if you don't really like the way things are coming together. But now we want to test and see, are they going to fit in my book? Now, I don't have any of these pages decorated. I do have some thicker pages in there, so I just want to be sure that I don't end up with a book that's stuffed too big, which I have done in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking all of my signatures and having them together, and I'm just going to lay them in the book. Now, you're looking top down, so it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to try and turn this up so you can see it a little bit better. So when the book lays flat, actually, I think I'm going to take the camera down and I will show you this a different way. So hang tight. Okay, I'm going to try and hold this still. So as you can see, the signatures I put into my cover just to see how we're doing in terms of pages. So, and if you can see, I'm going to try and get this down even with my book there. You can see that the cover is not straight across. It does go down a little here on an angle because we have our 15 pages in there plus, you know, the 2 small extra ones. And if I kept adding pages to my signatures, my book would probably start to come up, you know, and lay flat. But because I'm planning to put pockets and tuck spots and put note cards in a lot of those pockets and tuck spots and things throughout the book, and adding envelopes and paper clips and things like that, I think this is perfect for what we want, because as I add all of those things in, I don't want the book to end up being too thick. So if we just have our pages in here and we're tilting down slightly, I think this is just the amount of pages we want in the book before we start our embellishing process. Okay, so now that we have our signatures ready, I just wanted to kind of go over, you know, something else you could do. So if you don't like the smaller signatures, you could definitely do 3 signatures and just, you know, pull out 2 of these and split up the pages between the 3 signatures and just have 3 signatures. You could definitely do that. And as we make the template for the spine and things to bind it in, you know, you may decide that that's your best option. But there's no right way or no wrong way to do this. The most important thing when you're making your signatures is, number 1, to make sure you have the papers in there that you want, so that it gives it the texture and diversity and whatever that you would like in it, in there. And then also just to be sure that you've thought through, you know, how many papers are actually going to be in there and what that's going to do to your finished book, so that you don't end up having a journal that's too thick. So that is my process on how I put together my signatures. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified of more videos when I do them. And I hope that you'll like this video and come back for the next one. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.